Hi, my name is Corinne and I am an educator at Fallen Timbers, and today we're going to be talking about hibernation and migration. So throughout this video there's going to be certain times that you'll see a stop sign pop up on the bottom of the screen. When this happens, I want you to pause the video and discuss the questions on the screen. And the first thing that I want you guys to discuss is the different seasons that we have in Wisconsin and the differences between them. The four different seasons that you should have mentioned are fall, spring, summer, and winter. So some of the things that you might have mentioned about those seasons is that in the summer it gets really hot and in the winter it gets really cold. So some of the animals that live in Wisconsin don't like to be in the cold, and if you think about it, when we go out in the winter we normally have to wear a jacket or a hat in order to make ourselves warm outside. So these animals also have to do things to make themselves comfortable. And a word for that is adapt. So adapting means that they're just making themselves comfortable in their homes and changing their body in order to do that. So one example of that would be a deer. So deer get thicker fur in the wintertime so that they can keep themselves warm. If these animals don't grow thicker fur in order to survive the winter, what do you think that they do in order to survive? I want you to take some time to discuss with the class what you think that these animals do during the winter. Some of the things that you guys might have mentioned that animals do during the winter is that some of the animals in Wisconsin hibernate. Hibernate just means that these animals sleep during the winter. Another thing that animals do in Wisconsin is migrate. Migrate just means that these animals go to a warmer area during the winter to help them survive. Now we're going to talk about some animals that live in Wisconsin and what they do during the winter. In order to talk about these animals, we're going to play a game of charades. 3 students are going to go to the front of the classroom and act out an animal, and then you will guess what animal they are acting out. Once the teacher tells you which animal it is, then you are going to guess whether that animal hibernates or migrates. If you think that that animal hibernates, you're going to hold up this H. If you think that the animal migrates, you're going to hold up an M that looks like this. You will pause the video while you guys are acting these out, and then you will push play and I will reveal the answer and some cool facts about that animal. The first animal that you guys acted out was a bear, and a bear hibernates for the winter, so you guys should have held up your H card. And since bears hibernate all winter long, they have to eat a lot of food before they go into hibernation. And bears are omnivores. So as you can see on this bear skull, you can see that it has some larger teeth and then some small teeth in the front. So they will actually eat both plants and meat. Now you guys can move on to animal number 2 and act that out. The second animal that you acted out was a bumblebee. For the bumblebee, you should have held up your H for hibernate. Bumblebees will hibernate underground, so they'll dig a hole on the north side of a bank and crawl in there and sleep for the winter. And the reason that they pick the north side of the bank is because if they were on the south side, the sun would actually be too warm and could actually wake them up from hibernation. Now we're going to go on to the third animal. Our third animal is the duck. And ducks will actually migrate during the winter, so you should have held up your M. And once again, migrate just means that they move to a different area during the winter. And these animals will fly south where it's warmer. As you can see, this duck isn't really equipped for the winter. He doesn't have any ice skates in order to be on the pond when it's frozen over. So instead, he just has webbed feet. When these guys do fly south, they'll actually fly in a V shape. I'm sure that you've probably seen them flying in the sky before when you've looked up and kind of seen that V shape over your head. And now we're going to move on to our fourth animal. The fourth animal was a frog, and frogs hibernate for the winter, so you should have held up your H for hibernate. One cool frog in Wisconsin is the wood frog, and the wood frog will actually almost freeze solid during their hibernation. And these animals will crawl underneath the mud and stay there all winter long, and then when it warms up, they'll start moving again like normal, and their hibernation will be over. Some other animals that are similar to frogs are turtles and snakes. These animals also hibernate and are cold-blooded. And cold-blooded just means that they use the sun in order to warm up, or they use the shade in order to cool down. So they're using the things around them in order to regulate their body temperature. So these animals will also go underneath the ground. For example, like a snake will go into a burrow, or a toad will kind of burrow underneath a log. And now we're going to move on to the fifth animal. Our fifth animal was a bat. And bats actually migrate and hibernate. In the wintertime, bats will move to different caves or to warmer weather, which is migration. And then once they get to those new places, they will then hibernate. Bats have to hibernate because there isn't a lot of insects available for them to eat in the wintertime. If you guys ever notice, there aren't really a lot of mosquitoes in the winter, and bats can actually eat up to 1,000 insects in one night. So without that food for them, they can't stay awake all winter long. All right, now we're going to move on to number 6. Our sixth animal is the monarch butterfly, and monarch butterflies migrate. They actually go to Mexico during the winter months, and they'll go there because it's a lot warmer. And in Wisconsin, there isn't any food available for them to eat during the winter. They can actually fly up to 3,000 miles when they're going to Mexico, and they'll go in groups of 20 to 30 butterflies. And a lot of people actually see all of these butterflies hanging in trees when they are in Mexico, which is really cool. And now we're going to go over a few animals that are a little bit hard to act out, but I want you guys to guess if they either hibernate or migrate. The last animal that I showed was a woodchuck or a groundhog, and they hibernate during the winter. So these animals will build really, really deep burrows, which can be up to like 30 feet deep and as long as a school bus. And they'll make sure that it's below the frost line so that they can go in there during the winter. Before the winter, these animals will eat a ton of grass or plants, and they love alfalfa. You can see that their front teeth are designed for snipping off the grass, and they're very large. So this animal is in the rodent family. There's also something that I'm sure you've heard of called Groundhog's Day. And after hibernation, if the groundhog comes out and sees its shadow, that means that there's going to be a longer winter. All right, now I want you guys to guess if the next animal hibernates or migrates that is on the screen. The last image that you saw was a picture of an osprey. And ospreys migrate when it starts to get cold. And they will go to Mexico, South America, and Florida, where it's a lot warmer. These birds aren't able to stay in Wisconsin because there isn't food available for them. Osprey normally eat fish and they'll live along rivers and lakes. And now that we've talked about the different kinds of animals that live in Wisconsin, I want you to think about how some of them adapted to the winter, some of them hibernated, and then some of them migrated. So, for example, our woodchucks hibernated under the ground to adapt to the winter, and our osprey migrated to warmer places, and our deer grew thick fur in order to overcome the winter. So as it starts to get colder outside, I want you guys to look around and see what animals are still around and see if they are migrating and they're flying in the sky, maybe in that V shape, or they're eating a lot of food to prepare themselves for the winter, or maybe you'll see a hole that's in the ground of an animal that is going to be living in there for the winter.